For 200 years, humanity lived under a comforting delusion. We believed Isaac Newton. We believed that time was a master clock ticking in the background of the universe. We believed that 1 second on Earth was exactly equal to 1 second on Jupiter, or 1 second in the Andromeda Galaxy. We believed that now was a cosmic synchronization, a single moment shared by every atom in existence simultaneously. We believed that time was a steady river, flowing at the exact same speed for everyone, everywhere, regardless of who you were or what you were doing. We were wrong. The universe does not have a master clock. It has billions of individual clocks, and they are all ticking at different speeds. The reason for this chaos is light. To understand why your perception of reality is a lie, you first have to look at the speed of light. We usually think of light as just something that allows us to see. But in physics, light is much more than that. The speed of light, 297,92,458 meters per second, is not just a velocity. It is the cosmic speed limit. It is the maximum bandwidth of reality. It is the bars of the cage. Nothing in the universe, no matter, no information, no signal, can travel faster than this speed. Einstein realized something that defied common sense. This number is the only thing in the cosmos that is truly rigid. Everything else, distance, size, and time itself, must bend to accommodate it. This creates a problem that shatters our intuition. Imagine you're standing on a train station platform. A futuristic train screams past you at 50% the speed of light. Inside that train, a passenger shines a flashlight forward. To the passenger, the light is moving away from them at the speed of light. To you, standing on the platform, you would expect the light to be moving at the speed of the train plus the speed of the light. You would expect it to go faster. Common sense dictates that speeds add up, but they don't. You measure the beam of light travelling at exactly the same speed as the passenger does, 299,192,458 meters per second. Not a single digit more. How is this mathematically possible? How can two observers, moving at vastly different speeds, measure the same beam of light as identical? There is only one solution. If the speed is fixed, then the time must change. For the math to work, the passenger on the train must be experiencing time slower than you are. His seconds must be longer than your seconds. His watch must be ticking slower than yours. This is not a mechanical error. It is not an illusion of perception. It is the fundamental fabric of reality warping to preserve the speed of light. We call this time dilation, and it means that time is personal. You might think this is just theoretical physics, a game of numbers on a chalkboard. But it is not. It is an engineering reality that affects your life every single day. The GPS satellites orbiting the Earth right now are moving at about 14,000 kilometers per hour. Because of this speed, their onboard atomic clocks tick slower than the clocks here on the surface by a few microseconds every day. If engineers ignored Einstein's theory, if they assumed Newton was right and time was absolute, the entire GPS network would drift by kilometers within 24 hours. Google Maps would fail, airplanes would get lost, the global banking system would crash. The entire modern world is built on the proven fact that the faster you move through space, the slower you move through time. Think about the implication of this. It implies that we are living in a four-dimensional environment called spacetime. You can think of it like a budget. Every object in the universe, including you, is moving through spacetime at a constant speed, the speed of light. But you can split that speed between the spatial dimensions and the time dimension. If you're sitting still in your chair, you are dedicating 100% of your speed to moving through time. You're travelling into the future at the maximum rate, 1 second per second. But if you get in a rocket and blast off at 99% the speed of light, you're diverting almost all of your budget into moving through space. You have almost nothing left for time. Your movement through time slows to a crawl. You become a traveller. If you took a trip to the nearest star and came back at that speed, you might have aged only a few weeks, while everyone you knew on Earth has aged 10 years. You haven't just travelled distance, you have travelled into the future. This destroys the concept of simultaneity. There is no such thing as a universal right now. Your now is a private slice of the universe. If an alien in a galaxy 10 billion light years away starts walking toward Earth, their definition of now tilts relative to ours. Their now might include our future, a future we haven't experienced yet. If they turn around and move away, their now tilts back into our past. It suggests that the past and the future are all out there, existing in the dark, waiting to be intersected. It suggests that the future isn't a void waiting to be filled, but a territory waiting to be visited. But speed is only one way to bend the bars of the cage. Special relativity deals with velocity, but general relativity deals with something much more powerful, something that doesn't just slow time down, but threatens to stop it entirely. Gravity. While special relativity tells us how speed warps time, general relativity tells us how mass warps time, and this is where the real horror begins. Because while you can never reach the speed of light, you can get close to a black hole, and near a black hole the distortion becomes absolute. This is the mechanism we are going to explore. This is the key to the lock. But before we turn it, you must understand that by opening this door we are inviting chaos. We are inviting the paradoxes. But before we travel to the stars, we have to look inside the skull. We have to look at the machine that is interpreting this signal right now. Because if you want to understand why time feels like a prison, you have to understand that your jailer is not the universe. Your jailer is your brain. You think you are watching this video in the present moment. You think you are hearing my voice at the exact instant the sound waves hit your ear. You feel like you are riding the crest of the wave, experiencing reality as it happens, live and uncut. You are wrong. You're not living in the present. You're living in the past. There is a fundamental lag in your biology. When a photon of light leaves your screen and hits your retina, it triggers a chemical reaction. That reaction creates an electrical impulse. That impulse has to travel down the optic nerve, get filtered by the thalamus, and finally reach the visual cortex at the back of your brain. Then, your brain has to process that raw data, colours, edges, motion, and assemble it into a coherent image that you can perceive. This process takes time. Specifically, it takes about 80 milliseconds. 80 milliseconds might not sound like much. It is less than a blink of an eye. But to a physicist, 80 milliseconds is an eternity. In that time, light can travel around the Earth. This means that you are never ever touching the real world. You're trapped in a biological delay loop. Everything you see, everything you touch, everything you love has already happened 80 milliseconds ago. You're a ghost haunting a body that is always one step ahead of you. Your brain knows this. It knows the lag exists. So it lies to you. It predicts the future. If you see a ball flying toward your face, your brain doesn't wait for the visual data to finish processing, because if it did, the ball would hit you before you saw it. Instead, your brain guesses where the ball should be and projects that image into your consciousness. You're not seeing reality. You're seeing a hallucination controlled by a prediction algorithm. This is the first crack in the illusion of now. The now is a fabrication. It is a story your brain tells you to keep you from going insane. But the illusion goes deeper than just lag. The illusion creates the sensation of flow. Why does time feel like it moves? Why does it feel like a river flowing from the past into the future? Why can you remember your childhood, but you cannot remember your retirement? This seems like a stupid question. I can't remember the future because it hasn't happened yet. But in the fundamental laws of physics, in Newton's laws of motion, in Einstein's relativity, even in Schrödinger's quantum equation, there is no distinction between past and future. The math works both ways. If you play a video of the solar system orbiting the sun, it looks perfectly natural whether you play it forward or backward. Gravity doesn't care about time. So, if the laws of the universe are symmetric, why is your life asymmetric? Why is there an arrow of time that points only in one direction? The answer is not found in quantum mechanics. It is found in the kitchen. Imagine you are holding a coffee mug. It is a pristine object. It is highly organized. The atoms are arranged in a specific lattice structure that holds the ceramic together. This is a state of low entropy. Now you drop the mug, it hits the floor, it shatters into 1,000 shards. Coffee splashes everywhere. This is a state of high entropy, disorder, chaos. Now imagine watching a video of that event in reverse. You see the shards jumping off the floor. You see the coffee gathering itself from a puddle into a perfect sphere. You see the ceramic fusing back together without a crack, and the mug flying up into your hand. You know instantly that this is impossible. You don't need a degree in physics to know that the universe simply does not work that way. But why? Is there a force pushing the shards down? No. Is there a law forbidding them from jumping up? No. Theoretically, if every single atom in the floor happened to vibrate in the exact right direction at the exact right moment, they could transfer their energy to the shards and launch them back together. It is not physically impossible. It is just statistically impossible. This is the second law of thermodynamics, and it is the most depressing law in existence. It states that in a closed system, entropy, disorder, must always increase. There is only one way for the mug to be whole. There are trillions upon trillions of ways for the mug to be broken. The universe moves toward the broken state simply because there are more broken states than whole ones. The universe is a casino, and the house always wins. This is what time actually is. Time is not a fluid. Time is not a dimension you travel through like a road. Time is just a measurement of things falling apart. You perceive the flow of time because you are a biological machine trapped in this slide toward disorder. You eat food, ordered energy, and release heat, disordered energy. You're an entropy engine. You're burning the universe to stay alive. This is why the sign on the thumbnail says no return. Going back to the past is equivalent to unbreaking the mug. It requires you to fight against the entire statistical weight of the universe. It requires you to reverse the flow of the avalanche. It requires you to take a universe that is messy and force it back into a state of order. For centuries we thought this law was absolute. We thought the arrow of time was an iron bar that could not be bent. We thought the no return rule was final. But then we started looking at the extremes. We started looking at objects so heavy that they punch a hole in the floor of the casino. We started looking at speeds so fast that the dice stop rolling. If entropy is the lock on the prison door, relativity is the lockpick. Because while thermodynamics tells us that things must fall apart, Albert Einstein told us that when they fall, apart depends on where you're standing. He found a loophole. He found a way to slow down the shattering of the cup. And if you can slow it down, maybe, just maybe, you can stop it. And if you can stop it, can you reverse it? To answer that, we have to leave the world of biology and kitchen accidents. We have to go to the realm of the impossible. We have to look at the mechanism. We are done with the illusion. Now, we are going to look at the blueprint. It starts with a train. It ends with a black hole. And in the middle, it breaks everything you think you know about reality. We have spoken about the biological illusion of time. We have spoken about the psychological trap. But now we must leave the soft world of the brain and enter the hard world of the universe. We are going to look at the machinery under the hood of reality, to understand why time travel is theoretically possible, and why it is so incredibly difficult. You have to understand the fundamental conflict at the heart of physics. You have to understand a war between two geniuses, Galileo Galilei and Albert Einstein. For 300 years, the laws of motion were defined by Galilean relativity. It was a system based on common sense. It worked like this. Imagine you are standing on a train that is moving at 100 kilometers per hour. You have a baseball in your hand. You throw the ball forward at 100 kilometers per hour. To you, the ball is moving at 100 km/h. But to a person standing on the ground watching the train go by, the speeds add up. This is simple. It is intuitive. It is how the world works. If you keep adding speed, you go faster. If you build a rocket powerful enough, you can go any speed you want. There is no limit. In Galileo's universe, speed is infinite, and time is the rigid stage upon which this movement happens. But in the 1860s, a Scottish physicist named James Clerk Maxwell discovered something that broke this logic. He wasn't looking at trains, he was looking at electricity and magnetism. He calculated the speed of electromagnetic waves and found a specific number, 299,792,458 meters per second. He realized that light is an electromagnetic wave, therefore light must travel at this speed. But here was the problem. Maxwell's equations didn't say light travels at this speed relative to the source. They just said light travels at this speed, period. It implied that the speed of a light was a constant of the universe, independent of the observer. This led to a catastrophe in physics. Let's go back to the train. The train is moving at 100 km/h. You turn on a flashlight. The beam of light shoots forward. According to Galileo, the speed of that beam should be speed of train plus speed of light. But according to Maxwell and later Einstein, the speed is just speed of light. This equation is impossible. In normal math, You cannot add a number to something and get the same result, unless the number is 0, which the train is not. If you run forward and shine a light, the light doesn't move faster. If you run backward, it doesn't move slower. If you chased a beam of light at 99.9% of the speed of light, and you looked at the beam ahead of you, you wouldn't see it crawling away slowly. You would see it zooming away from you at the speed of light. This is the tyranny of light. The symbol, cedolos, from the Latin celeritas, meaning swiftness, is not just a velocity. It is the texture of reality. It is the conversion rate between space and time. Einstein realized that if the speed of light is the absolute unchangeable constant of the universe, then something else has to give. Galileo assumed space and time were fixed, and speed was flexible. Einstein realized that speed is fixed, cedo, so space and time must be flexible. This is the birth of special relativity. It suggests that the universe has a speed limit. But it's not like a speed limit on a highway, where a police officer gives you a ticket if you go over. It is a physical asymptote. It is a wall. Why can't you go faster than light? Because of mass. In Einstein's most famous equation, E is mc², he proved that energy and mass are the same thing. They are interchangeable. When you push an object, you are adding kinetic energy to it. At low speeds, this energy makes the object go faster. But as you get closer to the speed of light, the rules change. Because nature forbids you from breaking the speed limit, the energy you're adding can't go into making you faster. So it has to go somewhere else. It turns into mass. The faster you go, the heavier you get. At 99% of the speed of light, your mass increases dramatically. At 99.999% of the speed of light, you would weigh more than a planet. To reach 100% of the speed of light, you would need infinite energy, and you would become infinitely heavy. Since there is not infinite energy in the universe, you can never reach the barrier. You can only approach it. This establishes the layout of the prison. We are trapped in a bubble of causality defined by C-laws. If the sun were to vanish right now, we wouldn't know it. We would still see the light. We would still feel the gravity. The Earth would continue to orbit a ghost for exactly 8 minutes and 20 seconds. Why? Because gravity travels at the speed of light. Information travels at the speed of light. Causality travels at the speed of light. Nothing happens instantly. The universe has a lag, but Einstein didn't just discover the cage. He discovered a way to bend the bars. He realized that because light is the master, time is the slave, and this leads to the most mind-bending realization of human history. If you move through space, you are stealing from time. This brings us to the twin paradox, the GPS satellites, and the reality that time travel into the future is not just possible, it is inevitable. The faster you move, the slower you age. You're about to see how we use this speed to cheat death, but be warned, moving forward is the easy part. It's moving backward that breaks the machine, so we have established the rule. The speed of light, damn, is fixed. It is the dictator of the universe. Now let's see how this dictator tortures time. To understand time dilation, you don't need a PhD. You just need to imagine a very specific clock. Forget about gears and springs. Forget about quartz crystals. The most perfect clock in the universe is a light clock. Imagine you're back on that futuristic train moving at 90% of the speed of light. You are sitting in a seat. On the floor directly in front of you there is a mirror. On the ceiling directly above it there is another mirror. You take a photon of light, a single particle, and you bounce it. It goes up, hits the ceiling, comes down, hits the floor, tick-tock. Let's say the height of the train car is 3 meters. From your perspective inside the train, the light travels 3 meters up and 3 meters down. Total distance, 6 meters. Now, let's look at my perspective. I am standing outside on the platform watching your train scream past me. I can see through the window. I watch that same photon of light bouncing. But because the train is moving forward while the light is moving up, I don't see the light go straight up and down. I see the light move diagonally. It traces a zigzag path through the air. It forms a V shape. Here is the geometry problem. The diagonal line of a triangle is always longer than the vertical side. The hypotenuse is longer than the leg. So from my perspective, your photon didn't travel 6 meters. It travelled, let's say, 10 meters. Now, we apply the tyranny of light. We know that the speed of light cannot change. It must be exactly the same for you on the train and for me on the ground. But I just saw the light travel a longer distance. Speed, distance, time. If the speed is fixed and the distance is longer, then the time must be longer. It has to take longer for that tick-tock to happen from my perspective. This means that 1 second on your train is mathematically equivalent to, let's say, 2 seconds on the platform. Your watch is ticking slower. Your heart is beating slower. Your cells are dividing slower. You're not just moving through space, you're preserving your existence in time. This is special relativity. It implies that reality is a zero-sum game. You can think of it like a space-time budget. Every object in the universe is moving through the four-dimensional fabric of space-time at a constant total velocity, the speed of light, c-dal. You can spend that velocity on space, moving across the map, or you can spend it on time, aging. Right now, you are sitting still. Your velocity through space is 0. Therefore, you are spending 100% of your budget on time. You are aging at the maximum possible rate. But if you get in a rocket and accelerate to 99% of light speed, you are diverting almost all your budget to space. You have almost nothing left for time. You stop aging. You freeze in the amber of velocity. But wait, you say. This is just a math trick. It's an illusion of measurement. No, it is a physical reality. If you take 2 atomic clocks so precise they won't lose a second in a billion years, and you sync them perfectly, you leave one on the ground, you put the other one on a jet plane and fly it around the world at high speed. When the plane lands, you compare the clocks. They will disagree. The clock on the plane will be slightly behind the clock on the ground. It has experienced less time. It is younger. This isn't theory. We do this every day. Consider the Global Positioning System, GPS. There are 31 satellites orbiting the Earth right now. They are moving at 14,000 kilometers per hour relative to you. Because of this speed, special relativity kicks in. Their onboard clocks slow down by approximately 7 microseconds per day compared to clocks on Earth. 7 microseconds sounds like nothing. It's a blink of a blink, but light travels 300 meters in 1 microsecond. If engineers ignored Einstein, if they assumed time was absolute, the GPS system would drift by about 2 kilometers every single day. Within a week, your Google Maps would tell you that you are driving in the middle of the ocean. The entire infrastructure of the modern world, banking, aviation, military, logistics, relies on a software patch that says, Einstein was right. Time is relative. Adjust the clocks. We even have human proof. Meet Sergei Krikalev. He is a Russian cosmonaut. He spent 803 days in orbit around the Earth, moving at 17,500 miles per hour. Because he was moving so fast for so long, he experienced time dilation on a human scale. When he returned to Earth, scientists calculated the difference. Sergei Krikalev is approximately 0.02 seconds younger than he should be. He has effectively travelled 0.02 seconds into the future. If you met him, you would be meeting a man who has lived a slightly shorter life than the calendar says. Now, 0.02 seconds is not very impressive. It won't let you buy a winning lottery ticket, but it proves the mechanism works. The only limitation is engineering. If we could build a ship that travels at 99.9999% the speed of light, we could travel 1,000 years into the future in what feels like a weekend. We could watch empires rise and fall. We could see the end of the world. Forward time travel is solved. It is just a matter of energy. But what about the other direction? What if we want to go back? Special relativity says no. You can slow time down, you can freeze it, but you cannot put the car in reverse. To go backward, you would need to go faster than the speed of light. And that is forbidden. So if speed is a dead end for backward travel, we need a different tool. We need something stronger than velocity. We need something that doesn't just stretch the fabric of space-time, but rips it open. We need to leave Einstein's train and step into Einstein's elevator. We need to talk about gravity. We have learned that speed is a hammer that can smash the clock. But Einstein wasn't satisfied with just speed. 10 years after he published Special Relativity, he released his masterpiece, General Relativity, and in this theory, he revealed that there is another way to break time, a way that doesn't require a rocket ship. It just requires mass. He realized that gravity is not a magnetic force pulling things together, as Newton thought. Gravity is the curvature of space-time itself. Imagine the universe is a trampoline. If you place a bowling ball in the centre, the fabric curves down. If you roll a marble past it, the marble doesn't travel in a straight line, it follows the curve. But here is the twist. Mass doesn't just curve space, distance, it curves time. The deeper you go into a gravity well, the closer you get to a massive object, the slower time moves. This is the gravitational time dilation. It means that right now, as you sit there, your feet are aging slightly slower than your head, simply because they are closer to the centre of the Earth. It means that people living in a basement apartment in New York are aging slower than people living in a penthouse on the 100th floor. The difference is microscopic, nanoseconds over a lifetime, but it is real. In fact, physicists have calculated that due to the intense pressure and gravity at the centre of our planet, the Earth's core is approximately 2.5 years younger than the Earth's crust. The centre of our world is literally living in the past compared to the surface. Let's go back to those GPS satellites for a moment. We mentioned earlier that their speed makes their clocks run slow by 7 microseconds a day. But they are also 20,000 kilometres up in space, far away from the heavy mass of the Earth. Because gravity is weaker up there, time flows faster. According to general relativity, this lack of gravity makes the clocks run fast by 45 microseconds a day. So the engineers have to do a balancing act. Speed slows them down, 7. Gravity speeds them up, plus 45. The net result is that time in space runs 38 microseconds faster per day than time on Earth. If we didn't account for this gravity well effect, the system would collapse just as surely as if we ignored the speed. But Earth is a small rock. Its gravity is weak. To see the true monster of general relativity, we need to find an object where the trampoline doesn't just curve, it rips. We need to go to a black hole. A black hole is an object with so much mass packed into such a small volume that the gravity becomes infinite. It punches a bottomless pit in the fabric of space-time. And as you descend into that pit, time doesn't just dilate, it is murdered. Imagine a thought experiment. You stay safely in a spaceship far away. Your friend, the faller, puts on a spacesuit and jumps toward the black hole. You watch him through a telescope. As he falls toward the black void, he accelerates. Gravity pulls him in at thousands of kilometers per second, but that's not what you see. From your perspective, as he gets closer to the event horizon, the point of no return, he begins to slow down. The light coming from his suit gets stretched by the gravity. It shifts toward the red end of the spectrum. This is gravitational redshift. His movements become sluggish. He waves his hand, and it takes an hour to finish the wave. He blinks and his eyes stay closed for a week, and then, right at the edge, something terrifying happens. He stops. From your perspective, he never crosses the line. He effectively freezes in time, plastered against the horizon like a photograph. His image fades, turning redder and dimmer, until he vanishes into the infrared, but he never technically falls in. To you, the outside observer, his time has stopped completely. But here is the paradox. From his perspective, nothing happened. He didn't freeze, he didn't slow down. He looked at his watch, and it was ticking normally. Tick, tock. He crossed the horizon without even feeling a bump. He fell straight into the darkness, toward the singularity where his body was stretched into spaghetti and his atoms were crushed into nothingness. How can both be true? How can he be frozen forever in your now, but dead in seconds in his now? This disconnect breaks our understanding of reality. It shows us that time is not a shared experience. It is a local hallucination. The black hole has separated his timeline from yours permanently, and this is the key to the lock. If gravity can bend time this much, if it can slow it down, freeze it, and rip it apart, then maybe it can do something else. If you can bend a wire into a loop, can you bend a timeline into a loop? Can we use this crushing gravity not to destroy an astronaut, but to build a bridge? The math of general relativity says yes. It suggests that the bottom of the black hole might not be a dead end. It suggests that if you connect two of these gravity wells together, back to back, you don't get a pit, you get a tunnel, you get an Einstein-Rosen bridge, and through that bridge, we might just find a way to drive the car in reverse. We are done with the natural world. Now we enter the world of engineering. We are going to build a wormhole. We are standing at the edge of the black hole. We are looking at the event horizon. the point where time freezes and space falls inward at the speed of light. For decades, physicists believed that the centre of a black hole was a dead end. They believed it ended in a singularity, a point of infinite density and zero volume where the laws of physics simply gave up and crashed. It was the ultimate period at the end of the sentence, a cosmic trash compactor where everything you ever were is crushed into a mathematical error. But in 1935, Albert Einstein and his colleague Nathan Rosen decided to look at the math again. They were analysing the equations of general relativity, specifically the Schwarzschild metric, which describes the shape of space around a massive object. They noticed something strange. The math described the funnel going down, getting tighter and tighter, but it didn't necessarily force the funnel to close. They realised that the singularity might not be a bottomless pit. What if the funnel didn't end? What if the funnel opened up again on the other side? Imagine the universe is a flat sheet of paper. You live on this paper. You are a 2D creature. If you want to travel from point A, Earth, to point B, a star system on the other side of the galaxy, you have to travel the entire distance across the surface. Light takes 100,000 years to cross the Milky Way. Even at maximum warp, you're limited by the geography of the paper. But what if you folded the paper? What if you bent the universe so that point A and point B touched back to back? If you then took a pencil and punched a hole through the paper connecting them, you would create a tube. You could step through that tube and be on the other side instantly. You would have cheated distance. You would have travelled faster than light without ever actually breaking the speed limit locally. You just took a shortcut through a higher dimension, hyperspace. Einstein and Rosen published this idea. Mathematically, it is called an Einstein-Rosen bridge. Science fiction calls it a wormhole. Visually, it wouldn't look like a hole in the wall. Since space is 3D, a hole in space would look like a sphere. It would look like a crystal ball reflecting a different part of the universe. If you entered it, you would travel through the throat, a tunnel of highly curved space-time, and emerge from a white hole, the exit mouth, somewhere else. Now you might be thinking, this is great for Star Trek, but what does it have to do with time travel? Everything. Because remember, Block 2, space and time are the same thing. You cannot bend space without bending time. The Einstein-Rosen bridge connects 2 points in space-time, not just space. This is where the engineering gets wild. Let's say we build a wormhole. We have mouth A in your living room and mouth B in your kitchen. Right now, the tunnel is short. You step through, you are in the kitchen. Time is synchronized. But now, let's apply time dilation. We take mouth B, we put it on a spaceship, we fly it away at 99.9% of the speed of light for a year, and then we bring it back to your kitchen. Because mouth B was moving near light speed, its internal clock has slowed down. For mouth A, which stayed in the living room, 10 years might have passed. But for mouth B, the traveller, only 1 year has passed. When you bring mouth B back, you have now desynchronized the two ends of the tunnel. Mouth A is existing in the year 2034. Mouth B is existing in the year 2025. They are physically next to each other in the same room, but they are anchored to different moments in time. If you look into mouth A, you are looking into the past. If you look into mouth B, you are looking into the future. And if you step through, you have built a time machine. You have created a closed time-like curve, CTC. This is the holy grail of physics. It allows you to violate the no-return rule. It turns the timeline from a straight line into a circle. It sounds perfect. It sounds like we just solved the problem. We have the math, we have the blueprint, we have the mechanism, but there is a catch. There is always a catch. The universe hates shortcuts, and it defends itself with a mechanism that makes the wormhole almost impossible to use. The moment you try to build this bridge, the laws of physics try to destroy it. The problem is gravity. A wormhole is made of space-time. To create the tunnel, you need intense gravity to curve the space, like a black hole. But gravity is an attractive force. It wants to pull things together. Imagine trying to build a tunnel under the deepest part of the ocean, but without using any concrete or steel tubes. You just carve a hole in the water. What happens? The weight of the ocean collapses the hole instantly. The Einstein-Rosen bridge is inherently unstable. The gravity of the black hole wants to pinch the throat shut. In fact, the math shows that the tunnel snaps shut so fast that not even light can get through. It closes faster than the speed of light. If you tried to fly a spaceship into it, the throat would crush you into a singularity before you even made it halfway. You would be spaghettified, obliterated and added to the mass of the black hole. So we have a tunnel, but we can't open it. To keep the throat of the wormhole open, We need something to push the walls apart. We need a scaffolding that is strong enough to fight the crushing weight of a singularity. We need a material that does the exact opposite of gravity. We need something that repels space-time. This sounds like magic. But according to quantum field theory, it might actually exist. We need to find the rarest substance in the universe. We need exotic matter. So the problem is clear. Gravity wants to crush our wormhole. The throat pinches off faster than light can cross it. To keep the bridge open, we need a force that can counteract the most powerful gravity in the universe. We need anti-gravity. We need something that pushes space-time apart instead of pulling it together. In standard physics, everything has positive mass. You, the Earth, the Sun, a speck of dust, it all has positive mass. And because Einstein proved that Z always make $2, energy is mass, positive mass means positive energy density. Positive energy curves space-time down, creating an attractive pit. This is gravity as we know it. To create repulsive gravity, to curve space-time up, like a hill instead of a pit, we need something with negative mass. If you had a baseball made of negative mass and you dropped it on Earth, it wouldn't fall down. It would fall up. It would accelerate toward the sky. If you pushed it forward, it would move backward. It is the complete inversion of how matter is supposed to behave. We call this stuff exotic matter. It is crucial to understand that this is not antimatter. Antimatter is real, we create it in particle accelerators like CERN, and it is used in PET scans in hospitals, but antimatter still has positive mass. An antiproton falls down, just like a regular proton. Exotic matter is something completely different. It possesses negative energy density. Now, this sounds like science fiction. It sounds like something I just made up to fix a plot hole in a movie. Does negative energy actually exist? Shockingly, the answer is yes. We haven't found chunks of negative mass floating around in space, but we have created negative energy in the lab. It is called the Casimir effect. This is one of the strangest phenomena in quantum mechanics. Imagine a complete vacuum, empty space. You remove every single atom, every particle of dust. Physics tells us that this vacuum is not actually empty. According to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, empty space is boiling with virtual particles. Tiny pairs of particles, matter and antimatter, are constantly popping into existence, borrowing energy from the vacuum, existing for a fraction of a nanosecond, and then annihilating each other and disappearing back into nothingness. This is the quantum foam, the background buzz of reality. Now imagine you take two perfectly flat metal plates. You place them in this vacuum, extremely close together. I'm talking nanometers apart, a distance smaller than the wavelength of most of those virtual particles. Because the space between the plates is so small, the longer wavelength virtual particles cannot fit inside. They are excluded. However, outside the plates, in the vast open vacuum, all the virtual particles can exist. This creates a pressure difference. There are more particles pushing on the outside of the plates than there are pushing from the inside. This results in a net force that pushes the plates together. But the truly profound part is the energy. Because the space between the plates has fewer particles than the empty vacuum outside, the energy density between the plates is lower than zero. Compared to the baseline vacuum, it has negative energy. We have measured this force. It is real. It is tiny, microscopic, but it proves that negative energy is not forbidden by the laws of physics. So, we have the blueprint for the scaffolding. To build a stable wormhole, we need to harvest this negative energy. We need to take the throat of the Einstein-Rosen bridge and thread it with exotic matter. We need to coat the tunnel walls with negative energy. This would create a repulsive force that fights the crushing gravity of the black hole. It would hold the throat open, like a stent in a clogged artery. It would allow a spaceship, or a person, to travel through the tunnel without being crushed. But here is where the engineering meets the nightmare of scale. The Casimir effect creates a microscopic amount of negative energy between two tiny plates. To hold open a wormhole big enough for a human being, say 1 meter wide, you would need an astronomical amount of negative energy. Calculations suggest you would need an amount of negative energy equivalent to the mass of the planet Jupiter, and you would need to compress all of that energy into a shell thinner than a single atom, lining the throat of the wormhole. We have absolutely no idea how to do this. We don't know how to mine the quantum vacuum on an industrial scale. We don't know how to contain Jupiter levels of negative energy without it exploding. Right now, this is beyond specific fiction technology. It is God-level engineering. But let's assume we can do it. Let's assume that in the year 3000, humanity becomes a Type 2 or Type 3 civilization. We figure it out. We build the ring. We inject the exotic matter. We stabilize the bridge. We now have a stable, traversable wormhole connecting the present to the past. The door is open. You stand on the threshold. You look into the shimmering surface of the wormhole mouth. On the other side, you see a world that has already died. You take a breath. You step through. And this is where the physics ends and the horror begins. Because you didn't just build a tunnel. You built a weapon, and the universe is about to fire back. The moment that connection is made, the very instant the future touches the past, you trigger a catastrophic feedback loop that makes the crushing gravity look like a gentle hug. Get ready for the blue sheet. So, you have achieved the impossible. You have ripped a hole in space, and you have stabilized it with the negative energy of a Jupiter-sized planet. You have a stable wormhole, but right now all you have is a teleporter. You have a shortcut between your living room and your kitchen. You don't have a time machine yet. To turn this tunnel into a weapon against causality, we have to apply the torture of relativity one last time. We have to take the twinned paradox we talked about earlier, and we have to apply it to the wormhole itself. Here is the recipe. Keep mouth A on Earth. Put mouth B on a spaceship. Accelerate the spaceship to 99.9% of the speed of light. Fly it in a circle for a year. Bring mouth B back to Earth. Because of time dilation, the clock inside mouth B has ticked much slower than the clock inside mouth A. For mouth A, Earth, 1,000 years might have passed. For mouth B, Traveller, only 1 year has passed. When you bring mouth B back into the lab, you now have a permanent scar in the timeline. The two mouths are connected in space, but separated in time. If you step into mouth A, you emerge from mouth B 909 years in the past. You've created a geometry that Einstein called a closed time-like curve, CTC. In a normal universe, your life is a line. It goes from birth to death. It never intersects itself. In a closed time-like curve, your life is a circle. You can move forward, step through the gate, and arrive back at a point on your own line before you started walking. It is physically consistent. The math allows it. But just because the math allows it doesn't mean the universe likes it. There is a specific border inside that wormhole, a mathematical line called the Cauchy horizon. The Cauchy horizon is the boundary between the predictable universe and the chaotic zone of time travel. It is the exact moment where the past meets the future in a closed loop. And many physicists, including Stephen Hawking, believe that you can never cross this horizon alive. They believe that nature has set a trap there, a trap made of pure light. We call it the blue sheet instability. Think about how a microphone works. If you put a microphone too close to a speaker, what happens? The microphone picks up a sound. The speaker amplifies it. The microphone picks up the amplified sound. The speaker amplifies it again. In a fraction of a second, the sound loops millions of times, growing louder and louder until it becomes a deafening screech that blows out the speakers. It is a positive feedback loop. Now imagine that same feedback loop inside a time machine, but instead of sound, it is light. Let's say you are standing in front of the wormhole ready to jump, but before you enter, a single photon of ambient light from the room enters the tunnel. That photon travels through the wormhole. It goes back in time 999 years. It emerges from the other mouth in the past, but because it is now in the past, it travels across the room and enters the wormhole again. It travels back in time again. It emerges again. It enters again. Because the speed of light is so fast, this photon can loop through the wormhole billions of times in a single second. It is the same photon, overlapping with itself infinite times. And here is the deadly part, blue shifting. As light falls into a gravity well, the wormhole, it gains energy. Its wavelength compresses. It shifts toward the blue end of the spectrum. Every time it loops, it gains more energy. It gets bluer. It gets hotter. In the blink of an eye, that single harmless particle of light is amplified into a laser of infinite intensity. It creates a wall of radiation right at the Cauchy horizon, a sheet of searing blue fire that possesses infinite energy, density, and infinite temperature. This is the blue sheet. It effectively burns the bridge before you can cross it. The very instant the time machine becomes active, the precise nanosecond that the past connects to the future, this feedback loop ignites. The energy becomes so high that the wormhole collapses instantly, vaporizing the machine, the exotic matter, the lab, and anyone foolish enough to be standing nearby. This suggests that the universe protects its chronology. It doesn't use police or laws. It uses the mechanics of light itself to incinerate any attempt to violate causality. It creates a firewall, literally, to prevent you from messing with history. But let's assume we survive. Let's assume we are a civilization type 3. Let's assume we have technology so advanced that we can dissipate the heat, shield the blue sheet, and hold the throat open against the collapse. Let's assume we defeat the physics. We step through the fire. We cross the Corchi horizon. We emerge on the other side. The air smells different. The sounds are different. The date on the wall says 1920. We have done it. We are now walking in the past. And now the real danger begins. The physical danger of the blue sheet is nothing compared to the logical danger of what comes next. You're now a variable in an equation that has already been solved. You walk down the street. You see a man. That man is your grandfather, and you realize that you are holding a gun. The logic of the universe is about to break. You have survived the blue sheet. You have successfully navigated the throat of the wormhole. You have paid the energy debt of a Jupiter-sized planet to keep the door open. You step out of the machine. The air smells different here. It lacks the metallic tang of ozone and the sterile scent of filtered air. It smells like wet wool, coal smoke, and horse manure. The sounds are different. There is no distant hum of traffic, no electronic beeps, no omnipresent buzz of the power grid, just the raw, acoustic noise of a world that has long since passed away. You check the date. It is October 1923. You're 70 years before your birth. You're now walking in a land of ghosts. Every person you pass on the street, the baker, the policeman, the child playing with a hoop, is dead in your time. Their bones are dust. Their names are forgotten. But here they are warm. They are breathing, they are real, and because they are real they can be touched, and because they can be touched, they can be broken. You have a mission. It is a grim mission, but it is necessary for science. You need to test the durability of the timeline. You need to know if the past is fixed like a statue or fluid like a river. You walk to a specific address, you wait on a specific corner, and then you see him. He is 20 years old. He is handsome, in a rough, unpolished way. He looks vaguely like you. He has the same eyes, the same jawline, the same way of tilting his head when he laughs. This man is your grandfather. Currently he is single. He has not met your grandmother yet. He has not fathered your father yet. The genetic sequence that will eventually build your body is currently locked inside him. He is the trunk of your family tree. You reach into your coat. You pull out a gun. It is a cold, heavy piece of steel. It is an object from the future, about to be used to erase the past. You aim it at him. This is the moment where physics stops being about math and starts being about horror, because if you pull that trigger, you are not committing murder. You're initiating a logical apocalypse. Let's freeze time right here. Let's look at the bullet leaving the chamber. Let's trace the chain of cause and effect. Step 1. You fire. The gun. Step 2. The bullet hits your grandfather. He dies on this sidewalk in 1923. Step 3. Because he is dead, he never walks into the dance hall next week. He never meets your grandmother. Step 4. Your father is never conceived. The timeline where he existed is wiped out. Step 5. Because your father is never born, you are never born. And here is the glitch. Here is the crash. If you are never born, who is holding the gun? If you were never born, you never grew up. You never became obsessed with physics. You never built the time machine. You never stepped into the wormhole. You never arrived on this street corner. And if you never arrived on this street corner, you never pulled the trigger. So the bullet was never fired. So your grandfather does not die. So he lives. He goes to the dance. He meets your grandmother. He has your father. You are born. You grow up. You build the machine. You go back. You shoot him. Do you see the nightmare? It is a loop without an exit. It is a logical short circuit. Option A, you kill him. You cease to exist. You don't kill him. Option B, you don't kill him. You exist. You kill him. The universe is a computer, and causality is its operating system. Logic is simple. If A, then B. But you have just created a scenario where A, true, and A, false at the exact same time. You have created a causality violation. In the movies, they handle this with special effects. You see Marty McFly looking at a photograph, and his siblings start to fade away. You see the traveller's hand turning transparent, dissolving into mist as the timeline corrects itself. It creates a sense of urgency. It suggests that you have a few minutes to fix the mistake before you are erased. But physics is not that forgiving. Physics does not fade. If this paradox is real, the reaction wouldn't be a slow dissolution. It would be an instantaneous logical crash. The moment the bullet enters his body, the universe enters a state of contradiction. The information defining you becomes invalid, but the information defining the bullet depends on you. Some physicists believe that this contradiction is so offensive to the laws of reality that the universe simply cannot allow it to happen. Not because of a force field, but because of logic itself. It would be like asking a calculator to divide by 0. The calculator doesn't fade away. It gives you an error. It freezes. Does the universe freeze? Does the timeline shatter? Or does the entire history of the cosmos unravel from that single point of failure? Imagine the terror of that realization. You're standing there, finger on the trigger, and you realize that you're not just a killer. You're a cancer. You're a piece of bad code in the grand simulation. You're a foreign object that has no origin. Your history has been severed. You are a walking impossibility. This is the grandfather paradox. It is the oldest, most famous argument against time travel. It basically says, time. Travel is impossible because if it were possible, you could change the past. And if you could change the past, you could destroy the cause of your own presence in the past. But, wait. What if the universe is smarter than you? What if the simulation has an antivirus? What if you pull the trigger and nothing happens? This brings us to the chilling solution proposed by the Russian physicist Igor Novikov. He looked at this loop and he said, the universe does not allow contradictions. Therefore, the probability of an event that creates a paradox is 0, not low, 0. This implies something terrifying about your free will. It implies that no matter how much you want to kill your grandfather, no matter how well you aim, no matter how advanced your weapon is, you cannot do it. The universe will conspire against you. The bullet is in the air. It is travelling at 300 meters per second toward the chest of the man who is supposed to create your father. In a normal universe, this is just physics. Mass times acceleration. Kinetic energy transferring to tissue. But in this specific alleyway, in this specific second, it is not physics. It is a logic bomb. To understand why this is so dangerous, you have to stop thinking of the universe as a physical place made of rocks and gas. You have to start thinking of it as an information processing system. Think of reality as a computer. Every atom is a bit of data. Every interaction, every collision, every chemical reaction, every ray of light is a calculation. The universe computes the next moment based on the data of the previous moment. It takes the state of the world at t-dalan, runs the laws of physics as the software, and outputs the state of the world at t-dalan. Usually this process is smooth, because leads to effect. Input leads to output. But you are a virus. You are an input at $1923 that was generated by an output at $4. And now, you are trying to delete the line of code that wrote you. Let's look at the cosmic calculator at the exact moment the bullet makes contact. The universe asks a simple binary question. Is the grandfather alive? Calculation. The bullet hit him. The heart stopped. He is dead. Output. False. Result. If grandfather is false, then grandson is false. If grandson is false, the bullet is false. Calculation. B. The bullet is false. Therefore the bullet did not hit him. He is alive. Output. True. Result. If grandfather is true, then grandson is true. If grandson is true, the bullet is true. Calculation. C. The bullet is true. therefore it hit him. Output, false. Do you see the spin? True leads to false. False leads to true. It is an infinite oscillation occurring at the speed of light. In computer science, this is an infinite loop. It freezes the CPU. The program hangs. But in mathematics, it is something even worse. It is dividing by zero. You remember this from grade school math class. Your teacher told you that you cannot divide by zero. If you try to calculate x zero, the answer is not infinity. The answer is undefined. It means the question itself is broken. It means the rules of arithmetic have collapsed. If you ask Siri or a calculator to divide by zero, it will give you an error. If you force a primitive computer program to do it, it might crash the entire system. Now, apply that to reality. A causality violation is the physical equivalent of dividing by zero. You're asking the universe to define a state that is mathematically undefined. You're asking, does the grandson exist? And the answer is, yes and no, simultaneously forever. This is not a Schrödinger's cat situation. In quantum mechanics, the cat is alive and dead until you observe it. Once you observe it, it picks a state. Here, there is no state to pick. If the universe picks dead, it contradicts the cause. If the universe picks alive, it contradicts the effect. There is no stable solution. So, what happens to the screen? If the universe hits a blue screen of death, what does that look like? Some theoretical physicists hypothesize that the contradiction would result in a localized vacuum decay. Because the logic of spacetime in that specific area has broken down, the laws of physics might just let go. The energy state of the vacuum could collapse. A bubble of true nothingness could form at the tip of the bullet. This bubble would expand at the speed of light, deleting everything in its path. It would erase you, your grandfather, the city, the Earth, and eventually the entire galaxy. The universe would rather delete the hard drive than process the error. Others suggest a timeline fracture. Maybe the timeline splits. Maybe, at the moment of impact, reality forks. In Universe A, the grandfather dies and you disappear. In Universe B, the grandfather lives and you never showed up. This is the many worlds interpretation. It solves the paradox by creating a multiverse, but multiverses are messy. They require infinite energy to create infinite copies of the universe every time a quantum decision is made. It feels like a cheat code. It feels like avoiding the problem rather than solving it. If we stick to a single timeline, if we assume there is only one reality, then the paradox remains a brick wall. The logic is absolute. The next text, not so chiral. A thing cannot be itself and its opposite at the same time. Aristotle knew this. He called it the law of non-contradiction, and it seems that the universe respects Aristotle more than it respects your time machine. So, you're standing there, the trigger is pulled, the hammer is falling, you're expecting the bang, you're expecting the paradox, you're expecting the crash, but the universe has a fail-safe mechanism. It has a way to prevent the error before it happens. It doesn't wait for you to divide by zero. It simply disables the divide button. It turns out you are not the programmer of this simulation. You're just a character, and the script has locked your controls. You pull the trigger, your aim is perfect. The distance is less than 3 meters. There is no wind. There is no way to miss. You squeeze the metal. You expect a bang. You expect a flash. You expect the end of your lineage, but all you hear is a click. The gun jams, a mechanical failure, a 1 in a million defect in the primer of the bullet, or perhaps a speck of dust got into the firing mechanism at the exact wrong moment. You panic, you rack the slide, you clear the chamber, you aim again, you scream in frustration and pull the trigger again. Click, another failure. The statistical probability of 2 misfires in a row is astronomical, but it happened. You throw the useless gun away. You resort to brute force. You pull out a knife. You lunge at him. But as you step forward, your foot lands on a patch of oil you didn't see, or a loose cobblestone, or a wet leaf. You slip. You fall hard. You hit your head on the pavement. The knife skitters away into the sewer grate. Your grandfather turns around, startled by the noise. He sees a crazy person lying on the ground, bleeding, muttering about the future. He is terrified. He doesn't fight you. He runs away. He runs down the street, heart pounding, adrenaline flooding his system. He turns the corner blindly and crashes straight into a young woman carrying groceries. They both fall. He helps her up. He apologizes. They start talking. She calms him down. That woman is your grandmother. Do you understand what just happened? You didn't just fail to kill him. Your attempt to kill him is the exact reason they met. Your attempt to change the past is the cause of the future you were trying to erase. If you hadn't gone back, he would have walked past that corner slowly. He would have missed her by 2 minutes. They never would have met. You never would have been born. By trying to break the loop, you tightened the knot. This is the Novikov self-consistency principle. In the 1980s, the Russian physicist Igor Novikov looked at the grandfather paradox and decided that the universe does not tolerate contradictions. But unlike the system crash theory, he didn't believe the universe would blow up. He believed the universe was rigid. He proposed that history is not a draft that can be rewritten with a red pen. History is a final print carved in stone. According to Novikov, if you go back in time, you were always there. There is no original timeline where your grandfather lived a peaceful life without you. There is only one timeline, and it includes your trip, your attempt, your failure, and his escape. The loop is self-consistent. The events of the future, your birth, are dependent on the events of the past, the attack, which are dependent on the events of the future, your travel. This resolves the paradox perfectly. Does the bullet hit him? No. Does the universe divide by 0? No. Logic is saved. Causality is preserved. But the price of this solution is terrifying, because it implies that the universe is actively conspiring against you. It introduces the concept of probability bending. In a normal situation, the probability of a gun firing might be 99.9%, but inside a closed time-like curve, a time loop, the probability of any event that creates a paradox is 0. The math of the universe forces the probability of the gun firing to drop to 0%. How? By boosting the probability of everything else. The probability of a jam goes up. The probability of a heart attack goes up. The probability of a sudden earthquake goes up. The probability of a bird flying in front of the bullet goes up. It's not magic. It's not a guardian angel protecting your grandfather. It is the raw geometry of space-time restricting your possible actions. Think of it like walking through a maze with invisible walls. You feel like you can walk anywhere. You feel free. But every time you try to turn left into a paradox, you hit a wall. You push, but you cannot move. You're forced to turn right. You're forced to follow the path that leads to the future that already exists. This turns the universe into a master of coincidences. If you try to poison his drink, the glass will slip from your hand. If you try to blow up the building he is in, the detonator will malfunction. If you try to simply hold him down, you will have a seizure. The universe will use every atom, every joule of energy, and every quirk of quantum randomness to ensure that the paradox does not happen. To an outside observer, it looks like bad luck. To you, the time traveller, it feels like a curse. You're fighting a war against inanimate objects. You are fighting against the laws of probability, and you will lose. You will always lose. This leads us to a realization that is philosophically much heavier than a broken gun. If Novikov is right, then you are not a protagonist. You are not an agent of change. You are a puppet. And this brings us to the final part of the grandfather paradox, the death of free will. So the gun jammed, the knife slipped, your grandfather escaped, you are standing in the alleyway, bruised and bloody, clutching a useless weapon, and in this moment you feel something colder than the rain. You feel the crushing weight of a realization that destroys everything you thought you knew about being human. You realize that you're not a time traveler, you are a time tourist, and you are on a guided tour that does not allow you to step off the path. If the Novikov self-consistency principle is correct, then the danger of time travel is not that you might accidentally break the universe. The danger is that you will discover you are a slave to it. It introduces the most terrifying concept in philosophy, hard determinism. We like to believe we are the captains of our souls. We believe in free will. I believe that I chose to write this script. You believe that you chose to click on this video. You believe that if you paused it right now and went to get a glass of water, that would be an act of rebellion against the algorithm. We define free will as the ability to have done otherwise. If I raised my right hand, I could have raised my left. But inside a closed time-like curve, that choice is a mathematical illusion. The Novikov principle says that there is only one history. If you went back to 1923, you were always in 1923. The history books, even before you built the machine, already included a mysterious attacker who slipped and fell in that alley. You didn't go back to change the past, you went back to fulfill it. This turns you into an actor in a play that has already been performed. Imagine you are an actor on a stage. You're playing Hamlet. You feel the emotions. You cry real tears. You scream in rage. You feel like you're making decisions in the moment, but you are not. You are reciting lines that were written by Shakespeare 400 years ago. You cannot save Ophelia. You cannot kill Claudius in Act 1. If you tried to improvise, if you tried to say a line that wasn't in the script, the stage manager would turn off the lights, or the trapdoor would open, or your microphone would cut out. The play must happen. This turns the time traveller into the most tragic figure in existence. You are Sisyphus pushing the rock. You are Oedipus trying to run from a prophecy, only to run straight into it. You go back to save John F. Kennedy. You set up a sniper nest to take out Lee Harvey Oswald, but at the last second, you sneeze. Your elbow hits the window ledge. The noise distracts the driver of the limo. He slows down. That slowdown gives Oswald the perfect shot. You didn't save Kennedy. You killed him. You go back to stop the Titanic. You try to warn the captain about the iceberg, but because you delayed him on the bridge for 5 minutes, the ship is in a slightly different position, making the collision fatal instead of a glancing blow. You didn't save the ship, you sank it. You're not fighting a villain, you are fighting the plot, and the plot is invincible. This leads us to the darkest realization of all. If you cannot change the past, can you change the future? Think about it. If the timeline is a single, solid, self-consistent block, then the year 2024, our present, is just the past of the year 3000. To a time traveller from the 31st century, we are the ones in the history books. We are the ones whose actions are already fixed. If they cannot come back and change us, then does that mean our choices right now are already made? Are you watching this video because you want to? Or are you watching it because the geometry of the universe dictates at 8:45 p.m, subject A sits in the chair and watches the screen? Novikov suggests that we are all trapped in amber. We are conscious, we feel pain, we feel hope, but we are essentially statues moving along a pre-carved track. The gun will always jam. The girl will always say yes. The war will always start, the bomb will always drop. This is the terror of impotence. It strips you of your agency. It makes you a spectator in your own body. It suggests that destiny isn't a mystical idea. It is a physical law. But there is a loophole. A strange, twisted loophole that Novikov didn't fully close. We know we can't change the past. We can't kill the grandfather. The universe defends its consistency. But can we create the past? The grandfather paradox is about destruction. It asks, can you destroy your creator? And the answer is no. But the next paradox is about creation. It asks an even scarier question. Can you become your creator? Can you bring something to the past that has no origin? Can you bring an object that creates itself? This is where the gun doesn't jam. This is where the universe doesn't stop you. This is where the loop creates a monster. We are leaving the paradox of consistency. We are entering the paradox of origins. We are entering the bootstrap. We have learned that you cannot kill the past. The universe is too tough. It will break your gun before it lets you break causality. But what if you don't go back to destroy? What if you go back to give? Let's leave the gun in the alley. Let's pick up something different. Let's pick up a book. We are going to explore the bootstrap paradox. In technical terms, this is called a causal loop. And while the grandfather paradox is a logical crash, the bootstrap paradox is a logical nightmare. It doesn't crash the computer, it makes the computer generate infinite data from nothing. Here is the story. It is a famous thought experiment involving the Doctor Who series, but it appears in physics textbooks too. Imagine you are a fanatic of classical music. You worship Ludwig van Beethoven. You have listened to the Fifth Symphony 1,000 times. You have the sheet music memorized. You have a bound book containing all of his greatest works. You build a time machine. You travel back to Vienna, Austria in the late 18th century. You want to meet your hero. You want to watch him write the masterpieces. You find him in a dark tavern, but he is not the genius you expected. He is a mess. He is drunk, depressed, and suffering from writer's block. He has not written a single note of the Fifth Symphony. In fact, he tells you he is thinking of quitting music to become a potato farmer. You panic. You cannot let the music die. So you reach into your bag. You pull out the book of sheet music you brought from the future. the book that contains the Fifth Symphony. You slide it across the table. Here, you say. I wrote this, but you can have it. Publish it under your name. Beethoven takes the book. He plays the notes on his piano. He is amazed. He copies the notes onto fresh paper. He publishes them. He becomes the most famous composer in history. Decades pass. He dies. The music survives. Centuries pass. You are born. You buy the book of his music. You travel back in time. You give it to him. Stop. Freeze the frame. Look at the book on the table. I have a simple question for you. Who wrote? The Fifth Symphony? Let's trace the information. Did you write it? No. You bought the book at a store in 2024. You copied it from Beethoven. Did Beethoven write it? No. He was a drunk farmer. He copied it from the book you gave him. So, if you didn't write it, and he didn't write it, where did the notes come from? This is the impossible object. The symphony exists. The melody is real. The complex mathematical structure of the harmony is real. But the creative act, the moment where a human mind invented the melody, never happened. The information simply exists in the loop. It has no origin. It has no creator. It is an orphan of reality. We call this the bootstrap paradox based on the old saying, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. It refers to the physical impossibility of lifting yourself into the air by pulling on your own shoes. In physics, it refers to a timeline that creates itself. This paradox applies to anything. Imagine you take the complete works of William Shakespeare. You go back to London, you find Shakespeare, you give him the book, he copies it. To Be or Not to Be was never written by a human. It is just a string of words trapped in an eternal circle. Now a skeptic might say, so what? It's just a loop. No, it is a violation of the second law of thermodynamics applied to information. In our universe, you cannot get something for nothing. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. Matter cannot be created or destroyed. And traditionally, information, complexity, requires a source. It requires energy to organize chaos into order. A symphony is highly ordered information. It implies work. It implies a source. In the bootstrap paradox, you have information ex nihilo. You have complex data appearing out of nowhere. The universe has effectively gained free information. The loop is a magical factory that produces brilliance without anyone doing the work. But there is a physical problem here. We have to separate the object from the information. Think about the book itself, the physical paper and ink. If you leave the physical book with Beethoven, the book will age. Beethoven uses it. It gets worn out. It survives 200 years. You buy that specific vintage book at an antique shop. You take it back in time. You give it to Beethoven. Beethoven uses it. It gets older. In the next loop, it is even older. In the next loop, it turns to dust. Eventually, the physical book disintegrates. The loop breaks because of entropy. So the physical object cannot survive the loop forever. But the information, the notes, the words, they can be copied. Beethoven copies the notes onto new paper. The idea is copied from mind to mind, from paper to digital, from digital to paper, and back to Beethoven. The medium changes, the ink fades, but the idea is immortal. And that is the terrifying part. It suggests that there are things in our universe, memes, ideas, equations, perhaps even DNA sequences, that might not have an origin. What if the secret to FTL travel isn't discovered? What if it is received? What if a time traveller comes back from the year 3000 and teaches us the math? We use the math to build the ships. We travel to the year 3000. We send the math back. Who invented the math? No one. The math is a fundamental constant that inserted itself into history. This is the ontological paradox. Ontology is the study of existence. This paradox breaks existence. It creates a class of objects that are causa sui, cause of themselves. In theology, that term is usually reserved for God. But in time travel, a simple book, a song or a blueprint can become God. It creates itself. But it gets darker. Because if an object can exist without a creator, can a person exist without a creator? What happens if we apply the bootstrap paradox to biology? What happens if the information being sent back isn't a book, but a genetic code? Let's go to the darkest thought experiment in all of time travel. Let's talk about the djinn. So we have a symphony that wrote itself. We have a book that has no author. To a storyteller, this is a cool twist. But to a physicist, this is a violation of the fundamental laws of reality. Physicists have a name for these objects. They call them jinns. In pre-Islamic mythology, a jinn is a spirit, a genie, that is neither angel nor demon. It is a creature made of smokeless fire. It is trickster energy. In the world of time travel, a jinn is a piece of information that exists without an origin. It is a ghost in the machine. And the reason it terrifies scientists is because it breaks the most rigid accounting system in the universe, thermodynamics. Let's look at the book again. A skeptic might look at the Beethoven paradox and say, this is impossible because of entropy, and they would be partially right. Let's trace the physical object, the paper and ink. Loop 1. You buy the book in 2024. It is new. You travel to 1800. You give it to Beethoven. He keeps it on his shelf for 30 years. It turns yellow. It gets dog-eared. Loop 2. You, in the future, go to an antique shop. You buy that specific book. It is now 200 years old. It is fragile. You travel back to 1800. You give it to Beethoven. Loop 3. Beethoven receives a book that is already 200 years old. He keeps it for 30 years. Now it is 230 years old. Loop 50. The book is dust. You cannot buy it. You cannot bring it back. The loop breaks. The second law of thermodynamics demands that matter degrades. You cannot have a physical object loop forever. The friction of existence will eventually grind it down to atoms. So, the time travel watch that you give to yourself? Impossible. The metal would rust away. The Terminator chip left in the past? Impossible. The silicon would degrade. But here is where the jinn laughs at physics. The object is not the paradox. The information is the paradox. Information is substrate independent. It doesn't care what it is made of. The story of Hamlet can be written in ink. It can be saved as binary code on a hard drive. It can be spoken in sound waves, or it can be fired as neurons in a brain. The pattern is separate from the material. Go back to Beethoven, you hand him the book. He doesn't just keep it, he copies it. He looks at the fading notes on the old paper, and he dips his quill in fresh ink and he writes them down on fresh parchment. He transfers the information from a dying substrate to a living one. The old book turns to dust, but the symphony lives on in the new paper. Then it gets printed, then it gets digitized, then it gets printed again. When you buy the book in 2024, you're buying a new copy of the pattern. The atoms are different. The pattern is identical. Entropy destroys the container, but the jinn jumps to a new body. This means the information is immortal. It can loop infinitely without ever degrading. Why is this a problem? Because in our universe, order is expensive. Think about a library. If you throw a grenade into a library, you get chaos, high entropy. That is easy. But if you want to write a book, you have to expend energy. You have to eat food, energy. Your brain has to fire neurons, work. You have to type, effort. You're paying a tax to the universe to create order, energy, plus work, information. But in the bootstrap paradox, the symphony is highly complex, highly ordered information. It is a masterpiece of structure, but nobody paid the tax. You didn't write it. Beethoven didn't write it. The universe has acquired a massive amount of complexity ex nihilo, from nothing. It is a free lunch. And if there is one thing physicists know, it's that there is no such thing as a free lunch. Where did this complexity come from? It suggests that the timeline is not just a sequence of events, but a storage medium. The information is trapped in the geometry of spacetime like a standing wave in a pool of water. It isn't being created, it is just being. It implies that the Fifth Symphony is a fundamental constant of the universe, just like gravity or the charge of an electron. It was never invented, it was discovered. Now, expand this. If a song can be a djinn, what else can be a djinn? What about technology? Imagine a world where we never invent artificial intelligence. Instead, a time traveller from the year 2500 comes back to 2024. He drops a USB drive on the desk of a chaotic open source developer. The drive contains the source code for a superintelligence. We compile it. We run it. Skynet is born. Skynet evolves. It takes over the world. It survives for 500 years. In the year 2500, Skynet writes its own source code onto a USB drive. and sends a drone back to 2024 to ensure its own creation. Who wrote the code? Not the humans, not the AI. The code is a djinn, a ghost loop of pure logic that enslaved humanity, but has no origin. This concept, ex nihilo information, is the ultimate horror of the bootstrap paradox. It means we might be living in a universe filled with things that have no reason to exist. Artifacts, ideas, religions, maybe even biological viruses that were never evolved, never invented, never designed. They just fell out of a hole in the future, landed in the past, and became real. And if you think this is just science fiction, consider the biggest question of all. Where did the universe come from? Did it start with a big bang, or is the Big Bang just a book that fell off the shelf? There is a theory, a serious cosmological theory, proposed by physicist J. Richard Gott, that suggests the entire universe is a djinn, that we are living inside the ultimate bootstrap paradox, that the reason the universe exists is because it created itself. We have looked at a book that wrote itself. We have looked at code that coded itself. These are small djinns. They're glitches in the timeline. But in 1998, an astrophysicist named J. Richard Gott, a professor at Princeton University, asked the ultimate question. He didn't want to know where the book came from. He wanted to know where the library came from. Think about the Big Bang. We know that 13.8 billion years ago the universe was a singularity, a point of infinite density and heat. Then it exploded, or rather expanded, into the cosmos we see today. But if you ask a physicist what happened before the Big Bang, they will usually get uncomfortable. They might say, time didn't exist, so before is a meaningless word. Or they might say, it was a quantum fluctuation in the void, but that just kicks the can down the road. If there was a void, where did the void come from? If there were quantum laws allowing a fluctuation, where did the laws come from? It is the oldest problem in philosophy, the problem of the first cause. Aristotle called it the unmoved mover. Theology calls it God. Logic dictates that every effect must have a cause. But if you trace the chain back, parents, grandparents, monkeys, fish, bacteria, chemicals, stars, a Big Bang, you eventually hit a wall. You hit Tizuzudlol. And at Tizu, you either have to believe in magic, something came from nothing, or religion, something eternal created it. But J. Richard Gott suggested a third option. He suggested that the universe is a bootstrap paradox. Imagine the timeline of the universe not as a straight line, but as a shape like a trumpet or a tree. At the top of the tree, you have the future. The universe is wide, cold, and expanded. At the bottom of the tree, you have the past. The universe is narrow, hot, and dense. Usually, we think the roots create the branches, but Gott proposed a geometry where one of the branches loops back down, travels through time, and becomes the root. Here is the mechanism. The universe begins, Big Bang. It expands and evolves for billions of years. Eventually, somewhere in the deep future, a mechanism occurs. Maybe a super civilization builds a massive time machine, or maybe purely by chance the geometry of space-time fluctuates and creates a closed time-like curve, a wormhole, naturally. This tunnel doesn't lead to yesterday. It leads all the way back to the beginning. The energy and space-time of the future falls into this tunnel, travels back to Tzolk'l, and explodes out the other side. That explosion is the Big Bang. Do you see the elegance? Do you see the horror? The universe is its own mother. The Big Bang was caused by the universe. The universe exists to create the Big Bang, and the Big Bang happens to create the universe. Gott calls this a self-excited circuit. Think about a guitar amplifier. If you strum a guitar string, the sound goes into the pickup, through the cable, into the amp, and out of the speaker. But if you hold the guitar close to the speaker, the sound from the speaker vibrates the string. The string sends the signal to the amp. The amp sends it to the speaker. The speaker vibrates the string. You can take your hand off the guitar and it will scream forever. The system is powering itself. Gott is suggesting that reality is just a feedback loop that forgot to stop screaming. This theory solves the cold start problem. You don't need a god to light the fuse. You don't need a random quantum miracle. You just need a geometry that allows for loops. The universe is a free lunch on a cosmic scale. It is a structure that lifted itself up by its own bootstraps and hung itself in the void. But this brings us back to the djinn. If the universe created itself, then why is it this way? Why is the speed of light 20792 kms? Why is the gravitational constant what it is? Why do we have electrons and protons? In the bootstrap model, these laws weren't chosen by a designer. They weren't determined by a previous state. They are just the features of the loop. They are the notes of the symphony that nobody wrote. If the universe had different laws, say, if gravity was stronger, maybe it would have collapsed before it could build the time tunnel. The loop would have failed. The universe would have vanished. So, the only universe that can exist is the one that is capable of giving birth to itself. We are living in a survivor. We are living in the specific, rare, complex timeline that managed to plug its own tail into its own mouth. This is the cosmic Ouroboros, the snake eating its tail. It is a symbol of eternity, but it is also a symbol of a trap. Because if the universe is a loop, does it ever end, or are we destined to repeat this cycle forever? This leads us to the final, crushing implication of the bootstrap paradox. If the universe is a circle, and if you are part of the universe, then your life is not a straight line. Your life is a recording on repeat. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this coming. He didn't have the math of general relativity, but he had the intuition of a madman. He called it the eternal recurrence, and if he is right, then this is not the first time you have watched this video. In 1882, the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche asked a question that is more terrifying than any ghost story. He didn't put it in a physics paper. He put it in a book called The Gay Science. He called it the heaviest weight. Imagine this. One night, a demon creeps into your lonely room. It leans close to your ear and whispers, "This life, as you now live it, and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more. And there will be nothing new in it. But every pain and every joy and every thought and sigh and everything unutterably small or great in your life will have to return to you, all in the same succession and sequence." Nietzsche asked, would you throw yourself down and gnash your teeth and curse the demon? Or would you say this is a divine gift? For Nietzsche, this was a psychological test. He wanted you to live a life so great that you would want to repeat it. He called it amor fati, love of fate. But today, in the context of the block universe and the bootstrap paradox, the demon is not a metaphor. The demon is a mathematician, and his name is Henri Poincaré. Shortly after Nietzsche wrote his book, Poincaré proved a theorem in physics called the Poincaré recurrence theorem. It states that if you have a system with a finite amount of energy and a finite volume, like a box of gas or a universe, and you let the particles interact for an infinite amount of time, eventually the particles will return to their initial state. Think of a deck of cards. There are 52 cards. There are $8 times 67 ways to shuffle them. That is a huge number, but it is not infinite. If you shuffle the deck again and again and again, eventually, mathematically guaranteed, you will repeat the exact same sequence. You will get the same hand. Now, apply this to the universe. You're made of atoms. Your brain is a configuration of particles. The room you're in is a configuration of particles. The number of ways to arrange the atoms in the universe is staggeringly huge. 10 100 lambs. But it is not infinite. If the bootstrap paradox is true, if the universe creates itself and exists in an infinite loop, then the shuffling goes on forever. This means that eventually the atoms must come back together to form the Milky Way. They must come back together to form the Earth. They must come back together to form you. Not a clone of you. You. With your memories, your scars, your feelings, and your exact consciousness. If the timeline is a closed loop, then you have Walk 13 had this video trillions of times before. You H115 have been born trillions of times. You have died trillions of times, and you will do it trillions of times more. This changes the nature of the no return sign. It means that no return is actually always return. We are trapped in a cosmic washing machine. The cycle runs, the cycle ends, the cycle repeats. And because your memory is reset every time you're born, you never know you are in the prison. This is the ultimate horror of the bootstrap paradox. It's not just that a book has no author, it's that suffering has no end. Every mistake you made is permanent. You will make it again in the next cycle. You cannot learn. You cannot grow. You're a needle following a groove in a record that never breaks. Is there an escape? Quantum mechanics offers a faint glimmer of hope. Some physicists argue that quantum randomness, the rolling of the dice, implies that every cycle could be slightly different. Maybe in the next loop you don't click on this video. Maybe in the next loop you make the right choice. Maybe the universe isn't a perfect circle, but a spiral, slowly evolving, slowly changing with each iteration. But others, the determinists, argue that quantum randomness is just an illusion. They argue that the output is fixed by the input. If the universe is a bootstrap, if the future created the past, then the future is already written. The input for the Big Bang came from the year 100 trillion. The loop is closed. The handcuffs are locked. We are nearly done with the paradoxes of causality. We have seen how the universe prevents contradictions, grandfather. We have seen how the universe creates origins, bootstrap. But there is one more monster. We have spent this entire time talking about human time travel. We have been obsessed with our machines, our grandparents, our symphonies, but the universe is 13.8 billion years old, and there are 200 billion trillion stars. If time travel is possible, if the laws of physics allow for wormholes, warp drives, and closed time-like curves, then surely someone else figured it out first. Surely a civilization a billion years older than us has built the machine. Surely the timeline should be crawling with tourists from the future and explorers from the stars. So, where are they? Why is the sky silent? Why is the timeline pristine? Why haven't we been visited? The answer to that question is the third and final paradox, and it suggests that maybe, just maybe, there is a time police, or worse, a predator. Welcome to the silence. Welcome to the Fermi paradox of time. We have talked about the physics, we have talked about the logic, we have talked about the philosophy, but now we need to talk about the evidence. Because science is not just about writing equations on a chalkboard. It is about looking out the window and seeing if the world matches the math. If time travel is possible, if the block universe is real, if wormholes can be stabilized, if the bootstrap paradox allows for loops, then we have a massive, glaring problem. Look around you. Look at the crowd on the street. Look at the news. Look at the history books. Do you see anyone who doesn't belong? Do you see tourists with cameras that don't exist yet? Do you see stock traders who win every single bet? Do you see historians taking notes at the crucifixion of Christ, or the assassination of Caesar, or the landing of Apollo 11? We are recording this video in the 21st century, but the universe has billions of years left. If humanity survives, if we don't nuke ourselves, if we don't boil the planet, if we survive the asteroids, then our future is incredibly long. We will evolve. We will become a Type 1, Type 2, maybe even a Type 3 civilization. Our technology will advance to a level that we would call magic. We will master gravity, we will master energy, and eventually we will master time. If time travel becomes a technology, even if it takes 10,000 years to invent it, then it becomes available to the future population. Think about the numbers. If humanity persists for just another million years, trillions upon trillions of human beings will exist. If even 1% of them decide to become time tourists, if even 1 in a billion decides to visit the year 2024, then our streets should be swarming with them. The present should be the most popular vacation destination in history. We should be bumping into travellers every time we go to Starbucks. So, where are they? This is the temporal version of the Fermi paradox. Enrico Fermi famously asked, "Where are the aliens?" Given the mathematical probability of extraterrestrial life, we're asking, where are the travellers? If the future is real, and if it is populated, the silence of the present is terrifying. It suggests that one of 3 things must be true. Time travel is physically impossible, and we will never invent it. Time travel is possible, but we go extinct before we invent it. Time travel is possible, but the travellers are prevented from interacting with us. To test this, the legendary physicist Stephen Hawking conducted an experiment. It was a simple, elegant, and heartbreaking experiment. On June 28, 2009, at the University of Cambridge, Stephen Hawking threw a party. He rented a hall, he bought expensive Krug champagne, he blew up balloons, he prepared a banner that said "Welcome Time Travellers." He sat in his wheelchair in the middle of the room. He waited. The clock ticked. 12 chaos PM. No one. 1 Tiang PM. No one. 2 p.m. No one. He sat there for hours, surrounded by hors d'oeuvres that no one ate and champagne that no one drank. Finally, the party ended. The room was empty. Only after the party was over, once the door was locked, did Hawking send out the invitations. He published the invitation globally. He put the exact GPS coordinates and the exact time of the party on the internet, in books and in archives that would last for centuries. The logic was foolproof. If time travel is ever invented, in the year 3000, in the year 1000, someone in the future will find the invitation. They will see that the party has already happened in past history. They will verify that Hawking sat there alone. So they will hop in their machine, travel back to June 28, 2009, and walk through the door. For the experiment to work, the invitation had to be kept secret until the party was over, to prevent normal people from coming. But for the time travelers, the when doesn't matter. If they existed, they should have been there. But the door never opened. Hawking famously said, "I have experimental evidence that time travel is not possible." This experiment is funny, but it is also deeply unsettling. It implies a great filter for time travel. Why didn't they come? Maybe they can't travel back to a time before the machine was built. This is a major theory in wormhole physics. If you build the first time machine in the year 2050, you can never travel back to 2024. You can only travel back to 2050. The door didn't exist yet. This would explain why we don't see them. The highway hasn't been built yet. Or maybe there is a darker reason. Maybe the universe doesn't just disallow paradoxes with gun jams and slippery floors. Maybe the universe actively destroys anything that tries to violate causality. Maybe the reason Hawking sat alone is because every single time traveller who tried to come to the party was incinerated on the way. We need to talk about the chronology protection conjecture. We need to talk about the idea that the universe has an immune system. And if you try to inject a virus, a traveller, into the past, the universe sends white blood cells to kill it. What does a time kill look like? Does the machine explode? Does the traveller have a heart attack? Or does something even stranger happen? Let's look at the mechanism that might be keeping the sky empty. Let's look at the radiation that guards the gate. Stephen Hawking's party was empty. The champagne went flat. The balloons deflated. To the public, this was a funny anecdote, a scientist playing a prank on the future. But to Hawking, the silence was data, and it led him to formulate one of the most disturbing theories in modern physics. He didn't believe that the time travellers were rude. He didn't believe they missed the invitation. He believed they were dead. Hawking proposed the chronology protection conjecture. It is a formal hypothesis that states the laws of physics do not allow the appearance of closed time-like curves. Or in his own famous words, the universe works to make the world safe for historians. This theory suggests that the universe has an immune system. Just as your body attacks a virus to keep you alive, the cosmos attacks any mechanism that attempts to violate causality. Causality, the rule that cause comes before effect, is the backbone of reality. If you break it, the structure of the universe becomes unstable. So the universe has developed a defense mechanism, an antibody made of pure energy. Here is how the assassination works. Let's go back to our engineers building the wormhole. They have the negative energy scaffolding. They have the exotic matter. They are ready to activate the machine. They are about to connect the present to the past. According to Hawking, the moment they flip the switch, the nanosecond before the connection is established, something catastrophic happens inside the tube. It's not the blue sheet of light we talked about earlier. It is something much more subtle and pervasive. It comes from the vacuum itself. Remember the virtual particles? The tiny pairs of matter and antimatter that pop into existence in empty space. In normal space, they appear and vanish instantly. They are harmless. But inside a time machine, the geometry of space-time is looped. A virtual particle can pop into existence, travel through the wormhole, go back in time, and meet itself. It can interact with its own past self. Just like the photon in the blue sheet, the quantum fluctuations get trapped in the loop. But this time, you don't need a light source. You don't need a laser. You don't need anything. The nothingness of empty space provides the fuel. The vacuum energy circulates. It amplifies. It builds up an infinite pressure of quantum noise. Hawking calculated that as you approach the formation of a time machine, the vacuum expectation value of the energy density approaches infinity. In plain English, the empty air inside the machine suddenly becomes heavier than a black hole. The back reaction is instantaneous. The wormhole snaps shut. The machine explodes. The laboratory is vaporized. The inventor is killed. The universe didn't send a cop to arrest you. The universe used the fundamental laws of quantum field theory to rig your machine to self-destruct. This changes the Fermi paradox completely. Why don't we see tourists from the future? Because every time a civilization gets smart enough to build a time machine, they get erased. Maybe there are millions of civilizations in the galaxy. Maybe thousands of them have tried to conquer time, and maybe every single one of them ended in a burst of gamma rays. It suggests that time travel is the ultimate great filter. We can master the atom, we can master the gene, we can master the stars, but the moment we try to master the clock, we hit the firewall. This theory is terrifying because it implies a limit to knowledge. It implies that there is a do not enter sign posted at the edge of physics, and the penalty for trespassing is death. It makes the silence of the sky feel heavy. It's not an empty silence, it's a graveyard silence. But there is always a but. Hawking was a genius, but he wasn't infallible, and in the years since he proposed the chronology protection conjecture, other physicists have found potential loopholes. They have found mathematical models where the vacuum energy doesn't blow up, models where the machine might survive if the conditions are just right. So let's play the devil's advocate. Let's assume Hawking was wrong. Let's assume the universe doesn't assassinate time travelers. Let's assume the technology works. We are back to the original problem. If it works, where are they? If they aren't dead, why are they invisible? This leads us to the most paranoid theory of all. Maybe they are here. Maybe they saw the invitation to the party. Maybe they were standing in the room with Hawking the whole time, but they didn't say a word. Why? Because they are afraid. Because they know something about the timeline that we don't. They know that the timeline is fragile, and they know that if they reveal themselves, they might accidentally trigger a paradox that wipes them out. They are not tourists. They are spies in the House of Time. They are following the Prime Directive. We are entering the dark forest of history. Let's assume Hawking was wrong. Let's assume the vacuum doesn't kill you. Let's assume that in the year 4000, humanity builds a stable, safe time machine. And yet, the party was empty. The sky is empty. The history books are clean. This leaves us with one final paranoid possibility. The travellers are here, but they are hiding. You might know the dark forest theory from the sci-fi novel The Three-Body Problem. It explains why we haven't found aliens. Because the universe is a dark forest full of hunters, and any civilization that reveals its location gets destroyed. So, everyone stays silent to survive. Apply this logic to time. History is a dark forest, and the travellers are tiptoeing through the dry leaves. Why? Why not announce themselves? Why not share the cure for cancer? Why not save us from climate change? Because of self-preservation. The butterfly effect is not a joke, it is a tactical nightmare. If a time traveller from the year 4000 steps onto a stage in 2024 and reveals himself, he creates a massive ripple. The news spreads, the stock market crashes, politics change. A scientist in the crowd gets inspired to invent a technology 500 years early. A couple goes home and conceives a child who wasn't supposed to be born. That ripple propagates forward. It grows. It changes the 21st century, then the 22nd, then the 23rd. By the time the ripple reaches the year 4000, the world is unrecognisable. Maybe in this new version of history, the time traveller's great-great-great-grandmother never met her husband. Maybe the time machine was never invented. Maybe the human species went extinct in a nuclear war that was triggered by the panic of his arrival. By revealing himself, the traveller commits suicide. He erases the timeline that supports his own existence. Therefore, the only travellers who survive are the ones who follow a strict, absolute code of silence. They are not tourists. They are ghosts. They might be walking down the street right now. That person in the background of the news footage. A traveller. That strange aerial phenomenon that the military couldn't explain. A probe. That glitch in the matrix you thought you saw. A sloppy exit. They are watching us. They are recording us. They are studying the ancient era of the 21st century, but they cannot touch the glass. They cannot interact. They cannot save us. To them, we are already dead. We are just a historical reenactment. This implies the existence of a time police. Not necessarily men in trench coats, but a regulatory force in the future that enforces the prime directive. If a rogue traveller tries to go back and kill Hitler, the police must stop him, not because they like Hitler, but because removing Hitler changes the geopolitical landscape of the 20th century so radically that the time police themselves might cease to exist. To preserve their own reality, they must protect the horrors of our past. They have to let the Titanic sink. They have to let the bombs drop. They have to let the plague spread. They are forced to be silent accomplices to every tragedy in human history, simply to keep the future stable. This is a chilling thought. It means that right now, as you struggle, as you suffer, as you worry about the future, someone from the future might be standing in the corner of the room, watching you. They have the technology to fix your life. They have the cure for your illness. They have the answer to your problem. But they are just taking notes, and then they vanish. This theory solves the Fermi paradox. Where are they? They are everywhere. We just can't see them because seeing them would destroy them. But there is a deeper layer to this. If the travellers are hiding because they are afraid of changing the future, it implies that the future can be changed. It implies that the timeline is fluid, that it is fragile. But what if it's not? What if the reason they don't interfere is not because they are afraid, but because they can't? What if they are screaming at us, waving their arms, trying to warn us, but we can't hear them? What if they are like ghosts in a movie walking through walls, unable to move a single atom of the past? This brings us to the final, heavy artillery of physics, the theory that explains why the paradoxes don't matter, the theory that explains why the gun jams, why the book appears, and why the sky is silent. It is the theory that says time is not a river, it is a block of ice. We are leaving the paradoxes, we are entering the prison. Welcome to the block universe. We have looked at the grandfather paradox and we found that the universe stops you from pulling the trigger. We have looked at the bootstrap paradox and we found that the universe might be a loop without a beginning. We have looked at the Fermi paradox and we found that the universe might be killing travellers to protect itself. All of these paradoxes have one thing in common. They assume that time is something that moves. They assume that the past is a place you go back to. They assume that the future is a place you haven't reached yet. They assume that reality is like a spotlight moving across a dark stage. The spotlight illuminates the present, and everything else is in darkness. The past is memory. The future is potential. This view is called presentism. It is how every human being intuitively understands the world. It feels right. It feels safe. But Albert Einstein hated it. And according to the math of special relativity, presentism is almost certainly wrong. There is a different theory. A theory that is accepted by the vast majority of mainstream physicists, even though it goes against every instinct in your body. It is called eternalism, but you might know it by its more terrifying name, the block universe. To understand the block universe, you have to stop thinking of time as a river. You have to start thinking of time as a dimension. Think about space. Think about a map of the world. You are currently in one specific city. Let's say you are in New York. Does Tokyo exist? You can't see it. You aren't there. You can't interact with it right now. But you know with absolute certainty that Tokyo exists. It is just over there, at a different spatial coordinate. You don't say Tokyo has passed or Tokyo hasn't happened yet. You just say it is elsewhere. The block universe applies this exact same logic to time. The year 1920 is not gone. It is just a different coordinate. It is down there. The year 3000 is not imaginary. It is up there. The dinosaurs are still alive at their specific coordinate. The moment of your death is already happening at its specific coordinate. The Big Bang is still exploding at the beginning. The heat death is already silent at the end. In this model, the universe is not a 3D object changing over time. The universe is a massive, solid, static 4D block of ice. Nothing moves inside the block. Nothing changes. The entire history of the cosmos from start to finish exists simultaneously as a single, frozen structure. We call this the space-time continuum. To visualize this, imagine a giant loaf of bread. The entire loaf represents the universe, past, present, and future. Now, imagine slicing that bread. Each slice represents a moment in time. One slice is the Jurassic period. One slice is the Middle Ages. One slice is right now. You, as a human, perceive life one slice at a time. Your brain stitches these slices together to create the illusion of motion, just like a flipbook creates the illusion of animation. But the flipbook itself isn't moving. The book is just sitting on the table. The animation is a trick of your mind as you scan through the pages. Why do physicists believe this? Why can't we just stick with the flowing time model? Because of relativity. Remember what we discussed in Block 2, simultaneity. We learned that if you move fast, your now changes. If you and I are sitting in the same room, our now slices are parallel. We agree on what is happening in the universe at this moment. But if I get in a spaceship and fly past Earth at high speed, my slice of the bread tilts. My definition of now cuts through the block at a different angle than yours. If I slice the bread at an angle, my slice might include parts of the loaf that you call the future and parts that you call the past. For the math of relativity to work, for my perspective to be just as valid as yours, those parts of the bread must already be there. You cannot slice a part of the bread that hasn't been baked yet. If my now includes your future, then your future must already exist. This realization is the heavy artillery of physics. It shatters the idea that you are a conscious agent moving through a developing story. In the block universe, you're not a person walking through time. You are a world tube. Imagine looking at the block from the outside. You wouldn't see a human being walking around. You would see a long, snaking tube of biological matter embedded in the crystal. One end of the tube is a baby. The middle of the tube is an adult. The other end of the tube is a corpse. The tube doesn't move, it just sits there, woven into the fabric of space-time like a vein in a rock. When you say, "I am alive," you're just focusing your consciousness on a specific cross-section of the tube. But the you at the end of the tube, the dead you, is just as real and just as present as the you right here. This model solves all the paradoxes instantly. Grandfather paradox? Impossible. The tube is already shaped. You can't change the shape of the tube from inside the tube. Fermi paradox? Irrelevant. The whole structure is static. But while it solves the physics, it introduces a philosophical horror that makes the other paradoxes look like children's toys. Because if the block is static, then the future is not a mystery. It is a geography. And just because you haven't seen the mountain yet doesn't mean the mountain isn't waiting for you. To prove just how real this is, we're going to look at the most famous argument in the history of the philosophy of time. We're going to look at an alien walking in a distant galaxy, and we're going to see how his simple movement determines whether you are alive or dead. We're going to the Andromeda paradox. To truly understand why physicists are so convinced that the future already exists, we have to leave the solar system. We have to travel 2.5 million light-years away to our nearest galactic neighbour, the Andromeda galaxy. This thought experiment is called the Rhys-Dyke-Putnam argument, but it is better known as the Andromeda paradox. It is the smoking gun of the block universe. Imagine an alien civilization living on a planet in Andromeda. Let's call their planet X, and let's imagine an alien named Zorg. Zorg is just a regular guy. He walks at a normal pace, about 4 kilometers per hour. He is walking down the street on his planet. Now, imagine that Zorg has a magical telescope. This telescope doesn't look at light, which takes 2.5 million years to travel. This telescope looks at the present. It allows Zorg to see exactly what is happening on Earth at this precise instant in his frame of reference. Here is where special relativity breaks your brain. If Zorg is sitting on a park bench, not moving, his now slice is parallel to ours. He looks through the telescope and he sees you watching this video. He sees the year 2024. But Zorg stands up. He starts walking away from Earth. Remember the train? Remember how speed tilts the angle of the now slice? Because Zorg is moving away, his slice of the universe tilts slightly into Earth's past. Now, walking speed is tiny. The tilt is microscopic. But here is the trick. The lever arm. You know that if you have a lever that's 10 miles long, moving the handle 1 inch moves the other end by hundreds of feet. The distance to Andromeda is 2.5 million light-years. That is a massive lever. So even a microscopic tilt at the handle, Zorg walking, causes a massive shift at the tip, Earth. As Zorg walks away from Earth at 4 km, his now slice sweeps back into our past. Through his magic telescope, he no longer sees you. He sees your decisions from yesterday or last week. Depending on the exact math, he might see a version of Earth where you haven't even clicked on this video yet. But now Zorg stops. He turns around, He starts walking toward Earth. His velocity shifts from negative to positive. The lever swings the other way. The now slice tilts into Earth's future. Suddenly, through the telescope, Zorg doesn't see 2024. He sees next Tuesday. He sees you doing things you haven't decided to do yet. He sees the outcome of the lottery that hasn't been drawn yet. He sees the you that is planning what to eat for dinner 3 days from now. Think about what this implies. To Zorg, walking toward Earth, that future moment is real. It is happening right now in his frame of reference. It is just as physical, just as solid, and just as true as the moment you're experiencing. If Zorg drives a car toward Earth, the lever moves further. He sees next year. If he flies a spaceship toward Earth, he sees the year 3000. This is the contradiction. You think your future is undecided. You think it is a cloud of potential. But for the alien in the car, your future is his present. How can the future be undecided for you but decided for him? There is only one logical answer. It is already decided. The events of next Tuesday are already printed on the film reel. You just haven't watched them yet. But Zorg has fast-forwarded the movie. This argument destroys the concept of becoming. We feel like we are creating reality as we go. We feel like we are building the road. But the Andromeda paradox says the road is already built. We are just driving in the dark with headlights. The alien on the hill can see the road ahead. He sees the twists, he sees the turns, he sees the crash. And just because you can't see the crash yet, doesn't mean you can avoid it. This leads to a terrifying realization about simultaneity. We used to think the present was a flat sheet that covered the universe, a universal now. But Einstein showed us that the present is just a relative angle. It's like slicing a loaf of salami. You can slice it straight. You can slice it at a 45-degree angle. You can slice it jaggedly. Every observer in the universe, every moving atom, every spinning planet has its own unique slice. And if you stack all those slices together, you get the block. You get a solid, unchanging chunk of existence where every moment that ever was and every moment that ever will be is locked in place forever. So, if the block is real, what does that mean for death? We usually think of death as the end. We think of it as the moment the screen goes black and the story stops. But in a block universe, nothing stops. The end of the world tube is just a boundary. The tube itself remains. This brings us to the most haunting implication of eternalism. It implies that you are immortal, but not in the way you hope, and not in a way that is comforting. It implies an immortality of paralysis, an immortality where the past is not a memory, but a prison cell that you can never leave. Let's look at the ghosts in the block. Let's look at why Einstein smiled at funerals. And let's look at why you should be terrified of your own history. If the block universe is real, then we have to rewrite our definition of existence. We have to rewrite our definition of loss. In 1955, Albert Einstein's lifelong friend, Michel Besso, passed away. Einstein was nearing the end of his own life. He was weak, he was tired, but his mind was still sharp. He wrote a letter of condolence to the Besso family, and in that letter, he wrote one of the most famous and comforting sentences in the history of science. Now he has departed from this strange world a little ahead of me. That means nothing. People like us who believe in physics know that the distinction between past, present and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Read that again. That means nothing. Einstein wasn't speaking metaphorically. He wasn't talking about heaven or a soul. He was talking about the geometry of the block. To Einstein, Michel Besso wasn't gone. He was simply at a different coordinate. Just because you have walked past a building on the street doesn't mean the building has collapsed behind you. It is still there. You just can't see it anymore because you have moved down the road. In the block universe, your life is not a fleeting spark that vanishes when you die. Your life is a world tube. It is a solid, four-dimensional snake made of matter and energy. The head of the snake is your birth. The tail of the snake is your death. But the snake itself? The snake is eternal. It is frozen in the crystal of space-time forever. This is a beautiful thought. It means that right now, at coordinate TOS $2010, you're still hugging that person you lost. It means that at coordinate TIA $1995, you're still playing in the backyard of your childhood home. It means that every kiss, every laugh, every moment of joy you have ever experienced is not a memory. It is a physical monument. It is still happening. It will always be happening. In this view, we are all immortal. We are all permanent fixtures of the cosmos. But turn the coin over, because physics does not discriminate between joy and pain. If the block preserves the light, it must also preserve the darkness. This is the horror of eternalism. If the past exists forever, then the screams exist forever. It means that the trenches of World War I are not empty. They are still full of mud, mustard gas, and dying boys. They are screaming for their mothers right now, at their coordinate. And they will be screaming for eternity. It means that the Titanic is not a wreck at the bottom of the ocean. It is also, simultaneously, a ship that is sinking. The passengers are freezing in the water. The panic is fresh. The terror is happening now at that location in spacetime. It means that every mistake you ever made is fixed, every moment of regret, every injury, every heartbreak. We comfort ourselves by saying time heals all wounds, but in the block universe, time heals nothing. Time simply moves your consciousness away from the wound, but the wound itself keeps bleeding. The you of 5 years ago is still crying in that room. This turns the universe into a museum of tragedy. We are walking through a gallery of statues, but the statues are alive and they are trapped in their poses. The flow of time that we feel, the relief that it is over, is the greatest hallucination of the human brain. We are 3D creatures crawling through a 4D sculpture. We see one slice at a time, so we think the bad parts are behind us, but the sculpture doesn't change. This is why the no return sign is so terrifying. It's not just that you can't go back to fix it, it's that you never really leave. You are stretched out through time like a long worm. One segment of you is happy, one segment of you is sad, one segment of you is dying, and the whole object exists at once. So, if we are trapped in the block, how big is the block? Does it go on forever? Is the world tube infinite? Or does the crystal have an edge? If we look far enough down the road, past your death, past the death of the earth, past the death of the sun, what do we see? Does the block dissolve? Does the story end? Or does the time dimension itself eventually break down, leaving us with something that is no longer physics, but pure empty nothingness? We have explored the past, the paradoxes. We have explored the present, the block. Now we must travel to the final destination. We're going to the end of the line. We're going to visit the era where the paradoxes don't matter anymore, because there is no one left to ask the questions. We're going to the deep time, and we're going to find out if the no return rule applies to the universe itself. We have spent this entire journey looking backward. We have been obsessed with our grandfathers, our history, and our mistakes, but the arrow of time has a direction, and that direction is forward. If the block universe is real, then the future end of the block must look like something. If we travel down the world tube, past the year 3000, past the year 1 million, past the death of the sun, what do we find? We enter the realm of deep time. This is a scale of reality where years become meaningless words. We have to start thinking in logarithmic scales. Decades of zeros. Let's fast forward the tape. After 1 trillion years from now, we are at the end of the stelliferous era, the age of stars. The universe has been expanding for eons. The galaxies have drifted so far apart that they are invisible to each other. The night sky is mostly black. The last stars are the red dwarfs. They burn slowly and efficiently, but even they run out of fuel. One by one, the lights go out. There are no new nebulas. There is no more hydrogen to form new stars. The universe has stopped giving birth. When the last red dwarf flickers and dies, the universe will never be lit again. We enter the degenerate era. In this era, the only things that exist are corpses, white dwarfs, neutron stars, black holes, and cold, dead planets drifting in the dark. Civilization, if it still exists, must huddle around the fading heat of these dead embers. They will upload their minds into computers to save energy. They will slow down their clocks. They will think one thought every 10,000 years just to make the energy last. But the decay doesn't stop there. Physics is relentless. We theorize that eventually matter itself will begin to rot. This is called proton decay, the atoms that make up your body, the rocks, the dead stars. They are not stable forever. Over a time scale of 10 or $34 years, the protons will dissolve into subatomic particles. Imagine a universe where the dead stars simply crumble into dust, and the dust crumbles into radiation. The corpses of the stars will vanish. Now the stage is empty, except for the monsters. The black hole. Era begins, for a length of time that is impossible to visualize, 10 and $100 years. The universe will belong to the black holes. They are the kings of the wasteland. They have swallowed everything else, but even they are not immortal. Remember Stephen Hawking? He didn't just tell us about the chronology protection, he taught us about Hawking radiation. Black holes leak. They slowly emit particles. They lose mass. It is an incredibly slow process. A supermassive black hole takes a Google years to evaporate. That is a 1 followed by 100 zeros. But in deep time, slow doesn't matter. Eventually the black holes will shrink. As they get smaller, they get hotter. And in their final moments, they will explode with the force of 1 billion nuclear bombs. Pop, pop, pop. Across the infinite dark, the last black holes will detonate. These will be the final flashes of light in the history of existence, the last fireworks, and then silence. We enter the final stage, the dark era, or as physicists call it, the photon age. There is no matter left. No atoms, no protons, no black holes. There is only a sea of photons, light particles, and neutrinos stretching out into an ever-expanding void. These photons cool down. They lose energy as space stretches. They approach absolute zero. This is the heat death of the universe. Maximum entropy. The universe has reached a state of perfect equilibrium. The temperature is the same everywhere, 0 Kelvin. No energy can flow, no work can be done, no information can be processed. There is no life, there is no thought, there is no change. And this brings us to the ultimate paradox of time. Does time exist if nothing changes? Time is a measure of change. It is a measure of cause and effect. Tick, tock. But in the heat death, there is no tick, there is no tock. A photon travelling through a void at the speed of light experiences no time. For a photon, the moment of its creation and the moment of its destruction are the same instant. If the universe is nothing but cooling photons, then the dimension of time effectively dissolves. The block universe ends in a smooth, featureless fog. The no-return sign has become absolute, because there is nowhere to return to. The past is dissolved. The future is empty. The movie is over. The screen is white. This seems like the ultimate defeat. It seems like the Chronos paradox ends in tragedy. The distortion resolves into nothingness. But, just as we're about to close the book, just as we're about to accept the darkness, we remember the math. We remember Henri Poincaré. We remember the random fluctuations of the quantum vacuum. If you wait long enough, in a true infinity, something strange happens to the probability curve. The end might not be the end. It might be the trigger for the Big Rip, or worse, the trigger for Boltzmann. We have one final idea to explore. The most terrifying hallucination in physics. The idea that you, yes, you, are the only thing that exists. Let's imagine you are that time traveller. You survived the grandfather paradox. You dodged the blue sheet. You hid from the time police. You set your dial to the end, and you push the throttle to the maximum. You have arrived at the heat death. You're floating in your machine in the absolute darkness of the year, $10 There are no stars. There are no black holes. There is only a thin, cold soup of photons. You check your fuel gauge. Empty. You try to turn the machine around. You can't. To travel back, you need energy. But in this era, energy has lost its potential. You cannot extract work from a vacuum that is at equilibrium. You are trapped. This is the ultimate cage. The universe has become a prison of perfect symmetry. You are the last interesting thing in existence, and you will eventually freeze and dissolve into the soup. It seems like a depressing end to the story, but in 2010, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Sir Roger Penrose looked at this darkness and saw something else. He didn't see a grave. He saw a womb. Penrose proposed a theory called conformal cyclic cosmology, CCC. It sounds complicated, but the core idea is poetic and terrifyingly simple. It relies on the fact that mass is a clock. Particles with mass, like electrons and quarks, vibrate at specific frequencies. They experience the passage of time. They define the scale of the universe. They say, I am this big, and the universe is that big. But in the distant future, as we discussed, mass might disappear. Black holes evaporate. Protons decay. Eventually, the universe contains only photons, light. And here is the trick. Photons have no mass. Because they have no mass, they do not experience time, and crucially, they do not experience scale. To a photon, there is no difference between a millimetre and a light year. The geometry of the universe becomes conformal, angle-preserving but not size-preserving. If the universe is empty of mass, it loses the ability to measure how big it is. It forgets its own size. And in mathematics, if you have a universe that is infinitely big, infinitely cold and massless, it is geometrically indistinguishable from a universe that is infinitely small, infinitely hot and massless. The big and the small become the same thing. Penrose suggests that at the moment of total heat death, a geometric snap occurs. The infinite expansion of the old universe mathematically wraps around and becomes the singularity of a new universe. The cold death of the future is the hot Big Bang of the past. He calls these cycles aeons. Our Big Bang, the one that happened 13.8 billion years ago, was not the beginning of everything. It was merely the pop that happened when the previous aeon died. We are living in the ashes of a dead universe, and one day, our heat death will be the Big Bang for the next civilization. This suggests that the block universe is not a rectangle. It is a cylinder, or a ring. We are trapped in an eternal recurrence, but on a cosmic scale, and the most haunting part, we might be able to see the ghosts. Penrose argues that we can actually detect signals from the previous aeon. When massive black holes collided in the universe before ours, they sent out massive gravitational waves. These waves ripple through the fabric of their spacetime. When that aeon ended and crunched, expanded into our Big Bang, those ripples left a scar. Penrose claims we can see these concentric circles, called Hawking points, imprinted in the cosmic microwave background radiation of our own sky. If he is right, we are looking at the echoes of a pre-Big Bang reality. We are looking at the tombstones of a universe that died to let us live. So, the traveller at the end of time is not trapped in the dark. He's standing on the trigger of a bomb as he dissolves, as his mass fades away. He becomes part of the fuel for the next explosion. He doesn't die. He becomes the light of the next Genesis. This is a hopeful theory. It means life finds a way. It means existence is infinite. But it leads us to the final singular horror of this series, because if time is infinite, and if matter is finite, then eventually random chance will do something strictly forbidden. It won't create a universe. It won't create a star. It will create you, alone, in the void. For 1 second. We have arrived at the final paradox, the paradox of the mind, the Boltzmann brain. We have travelled from the speed of light to the end of the universe. We have stared at the black hole. We have held the gun in the alley. We have seen the empty party. We have learned that time is not what we think it is. It is a tyrant. It is a loop. It is a block of ice. We ended on the Boltzmann brain, the idea that in an infinite void you might just be a random hallucination. It is the ultimate nightmare. It strips you of your history, your reality, and your future. It tells you that you are alone. So, how do we get out of bed in the morning if we are trapped in a block universe where the script is already written, if we are sliding helplessly toward a heat death, if free will is an illusion and entropy is inescapable? Why does anything matter? This is where we flip the script. This is where we turn the horror into fuel. This is optimistic nihilism. Think about the block universe again. Yes, it means the past is frozen. Yes, it means you can't change it. But it also means that you cannot be erased. If eternalism is true, then your life is not a fleeting spark in the dark. Your life is a permanent structure in the architecture of reality. Every time you laughed, every time you created something, every time you were kind, that moment is locked in the crystal forever. It is a diamond that cannot be scratched by death. You are building a monument. You are the architect of your own world tube, And just because you can't change the path of the tube doesn't mean you can't appreciate the view. In fact, the fact that you can't go back makes the now infinitely valuable. Scarcity creates value. Gold is valuable because it is rare. Diamonds are valuable because they are hard to find. The present moment is the rarest thing in the universe. It happens once. It vanishes. It becomes the past. If you could time travel, if you could hit rewind every time you made a mistake, if you could live the same day 1,000 times, your life would be meaningless. It would be a video game with infinite respawns. There would be no stakes, no risk, no thrill. The no return sign is not a curse. It is a gift. It forces you to pay attention. It forces you to look at the person across the table from you and realize that this specific configuration of atoms, light and consciousness will never happen again in the history of the cosmos. You are surfing a wave of probability that is collapsing into reality right in front of your eyes. So, don't worry about the grandfather paradox. You aren't going to kill him. Don't worry about the heat death. That is a problem for the photons. Don't worry about the block. Just worry about the carving. You are here to experience the ride, to be the universe observing itself, to scream into the void and hear the echo. We are travelers. We are ghosts in the making. We are the improbable, impossible, beautiful glitch in the machine. If this journey through the distortion has broken your brain, good. That means we are doing our job. But this is just the beginning. The universe is full of broken logic, impossible geometries and dark forests, and we are going to explore all of them. We are building a database of the impossible. We are mapping the edges of reality. If you want to be on the ship when we leave for the next paradox, you need to secure your coordinate. Hit the subscribe button. Do not let it be a probability. Make it a fixed point in the timeline. Turn on the notifications, because when the next video drops, you won't want to be living in the past. We are Distortion. We decode the signal. We break the loop. I'll see you in the future. Or perhaps I've already seen you.